Hi everyone and welcome to Flipping Heck Business Flip Learning for AQA A-Level Business Studies. So this is video number 4 in the decision making to improve operational performance. So in this video we are going to be looking at labor productivity. So contents, like I said, are labor productivity, how to measure labor productivity, the effects of higher or lower labor productivity, ways of improving labor productivity, challenges of improving labor productivity. Could I say labor productivity anymore? So when you're doing your bigger questions, so like your 16 mark to 25 mark, so think anything with AO4, then you're going to want to pull in some areas from outside the curriculum, or outside of the, not necessarily the curriculum, but from other areas of the curriculum. So you're going to want to think about like, okay, so what does this actually link to? Now in your analysis, you want to be thinking about this. So this could be one of your like steps, one of your chains of analysis. So if you're talking about labor productivity, then you can talk about unit costs, efficiency, break-even output from finance, competitiveness from marketing, motivation from HR, or technology in operations as well. So labor productivity. Labor productivity is basically looking at the amount of goods and services that a worker produces in a given amount of time. So what we're talking about here is how much goods, so how many cars a worker would be able to produce, how many computer systems they'd be able to like put together if you're working in that industry. Now it's important to know because labor actually makes up a bulk of an organization's expenses. It tends to be quite high, it can be variable, but it is kind of one of the areas that is easy to have a little bit of control over if you need to. If you think about it, if you've got a company that is going under or like, is like at risk, then what do? The first thing they do is they lay off people, they lay off staff. They get rid of like 500 employees. Well, that 500 employees, if you think about it, even if they were at minimum wage, would be costing thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of pounds every hour. And then of course you times it by how many days they work, then you times it by like how long they're there for the year, and it all adds up to like it can potentially be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. So you need to make sure that all of your workers are working efficiently and profitably, right? So you need to make sure that they are actually producing what they can, how they can. And it is a key contributor to unit cost and as such it should be productive as possible. You need to make sure that your unit costs are kept as low as possible because they should be working at their maximum output. So a bit of a busy slide this, I know. So the formula is labor productivity, which is measured in output per employee in units, equals output per period, so again in units, divided by number of employees at work. So labor productivity equals output divided by number of employees. So if we use an example here, the Nissan Sunderland plant makes 9,750 cars per week with a total of 696 workers. So workers average shift of 8 hours a day. So if we look at it, labor productivity equals 9,750 divided by 696 equals 14 cars per worker. So what they're actually producing is 14 cars per worker per week. Then you look at hours a week, they're doing 27,840. I think I did this by just timesing it by 8. And you actually end up with, so your workers of like say they're doing 27,840, you've got 9,750 divided by 27,840, which equals 0.35 units per hour. So we've been able to work out here that workers per week, so per worker you are producing 14 cars per worker. Or if you wanted to work it out by how productive you are by time, then we can work out that we are 0.35 units per hour is actually being produced. So higher labor productivity means lower labor costs per unit. So if we're looking at labor productivity, higher output per employee means lower cost labor cost per unit. Key influencing factors. So we've got the extent and quality of fixed assets. So equipment, IT systems. So if you've got a dated system, it could be slowing people down. If you've got dated equipment, then it could be that you're not going to be able to produce as much. Then you've got the skills, ability and motivation of the workforce. So have you got the right people in the right place at the right time? And are they working for you or are they working against you? You've got methods of production. So are you doing things that are you doing unnecessary bureaucracy? Like, is there something that you could streamline your operation with? Have you got too many levels of organization? Extent to which the workforce is trained and supported. So like, what is their working environment like? Do they feel safe? Do they feel motivated? Are they happy workers? And then you've got external factors such as reliability of suppliers. Are they getting the goods to you so that you can get them transported out? Are your transport systems working so that once you produce the goods, are they being collected quickly enough? So what ways can we improve labor productivity? So you can measure performance and set targets. This is really important. You need to be able to actually know what your labor productivity is and go, right, well, we want to be this productive. If you've not got a target, you are not going to be able to actually get there. You're not, if you just go, oh, well, we just want to increase labor productivity. Well, do you want to increase it by 0.001%, 1%, 10%, 1000%? What do you want to do? You've got no goals. You can streamline production process. So, are there unnecessary steps? Can it be reduced down? Can you actually like have things working at the same time? Can you do some concurrent activity? Like, are you able to then produce like, a bowl in a quicker amount of time or a car in a quicker amount of time? You can invest in capital equipment. So again, we were talking about labor intensive or capital intensive. Well, here we've got actually getting them the automation or computerization. It may mean like getting rid of some staff, but if you look at Nissan again, if they got like more computers in and they were able to reduce down the number of staff by another 100, then you could guarantee that and still produce the same amount, then of course the unit cost would go down with that. But of course that requires investment right at the beginning. And then we've got invest in employee training, make people better, and improve working conditions, make people happy. Just because you train and train and train doesn't necessarily that people are going to be enjoying their job. And if people aren't enjoying their job, they're going to take more sick days, they're going to be ill for longer, they're going to want to take like maybe longer holidays, they might just not be working as fast as they can be because they just see this as a dead-end job. So you need to make sure that all of these pull together to increase and improve your labor productivity. But there are always going to be problems with this. So we've got like the potential trade-off with higher quality, right? So higher output must still be of a right quality. Just because people are working harder, and think about capacity utilization here. If people are working harder, and working to 100% capacity, what happens when something goes wrong? What happens with when people are stressed? Then they will make mistakes. There's potential for employee resistance. So if you're introducing new technology, not everybody wants to be a part of that. Certainly workers who have worked somewhere for a long period of time might see new equipment coming in as a threat to their job, and they might not want to use it. And then employees may demand higher pay for improved production. So it kind of negates the impact on unit cost. Well, okay, well, we've increased our profit by 100 million. Where's our share of it? And it's all because of us. Well, why aren't we getting a part of this as well? So kind of the last point is that productivity is a key point of remaining competitive in modern business. Labor costs remain significantly part of the total operating cost. So they are very, very expensive. You've got to make sure that your labor costs are kept right, particularly for labor intensive operations. And then overall, labor productivity is the result of several complex factors, not just about how hard employees actually work. There are other factors that need to be pulled in as well. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Video number 5 will be following very, very shortly.